Now, Minister, as has been the tradition with working for you, the host is accustomed of asking all the ministers, including the Prime Minister, how the first 9 months in office has been. So what has been your experience?
My experience has been multifaceted. Multifaceted for several reasons. One, because I came out of the private sector. My entire background, for the most part, has been private sector driven. And after having ran a private sector development agency for 16 and a half years, and then immediately thereafter starting my own business as a business advocacy and support services consultant, it was a bit of a culture shock for me to come back into the public sector, because my career after leaving school began in the public sector as a teacher at Bastia High School. And then when I would have returned from college after graduate school, I had a very short stint at the Ministry of Tourism as an interim public relations manager. But then the rank and file of my career would have been categorized by private sector involvement and advocacy. So the culture change is a bit different because the work ethic is different. I think based on my private sector experience, I would have had a situation where the clients with whom I would have interacted and the membership base that I would have been advocating on behalf of would have been approaching issues to do with workplace performance, productivity, and so forth from the standpoint of results, from the standpoint of merit. And the public sector is a departure from that, even though I very well see, based on what we have articulated as a party and as a government now, of having more of a public sector transformation policy based on meritocracy, but not necessarily based on the traditional system of people operating in the public sector as if it's an entitlement. Okay, I've worked so many years, I am due this increment this year. So what we really would like to see, and that is where the culture shift has begun to become evident, is that we want to run a public sector that recognizes that because we are small, because we are challenged, because we have a relatively smaller labor force than most islands, we have to make sure that at the same time the national competitiveness of St. Kitts and Nevis is largely characterized by the quality of our workforce in the public as well as in the private sector. And the best way for us to do that is to set targets and set standards in terms of performance and productivity. What this means is that not only will you be entering into the job market having, for want of a better term, signed a contract with your government as your employer, that you bring your skills, your services, and your talent to the workplace, and in exchange for that you get paid. It's not about showing up between 8 to 4, and it doesn't matter if you perform or not, or if you watch the clock from 8 to 4, or if you have your bag over your shoulders by 3:45. It's about showing results. It's about performance. It's about going the extra step. So that at the end of the day, when persons are promoted, they're promoted with the confidence that they have earned it, and that there is trust that you would have embedded in that individual to be able to make an educated decision and say, this individual is worthy of promotion because I see leadership acumen inside of this individual, or I see their ability to think on their feet, or to get people to work as a team, or to not be threatened if other persons come in the workforce who perhaps might be more educated than you or may have more experience than you. And there are certain countries that we can look to as examples that we can follow in terms of the paradigm shift that we're hoping to get towards that type of productivity for national development. One such country I often refer to is Singapore. Singapore has an island economy that is very similar to ours, has come out of a similar sugar past like us, just like other small countries, relatively speaking, like Mauritius. And what Singapore has been able to do over the past 50 or 60 years is to do the type of economic transformation that started in the mindset of the people who work there, where they understand what their role is. So it's not just a matter of you thinking, well, it doesn't matter if I perform because I only sweep the drain. It doesn't matter if I give results because I'm only an orderly at the hospital, or I'm only teaching in the government school system and they don't like to pay teachers much money, so I will just be on a go slow, operate on automatic control or autopilot, and figure that's the end of it. They are able to bridge that divide among the Singaporean psyche that this is my role, but this is where I has been amazing to me has been the approach of the electorate, or I should say some of the electorate, towards in terms of the demands that they expect of public officials. Because, and it varies too, because when you look at the history of St. Kitts and Nevis, I guess because one came out of a peasantry system after emancipation, and the other one was a system wherein the crown owned all of the land, you found that just like Anguilla, of which we were a part as a trinity, and Nevis, the attitude was always different, because these are people who were landed, they had title to land, they had title to property, these are people who were self-employed, they were industrious, and the reliance factor on government was not that prominent. But the history of St. Kitts now, as the other partner in the equation, has been different, where it was a case that the crown owned all of the land, or most of the land. So you either work for the crown, as in our case, in the 400-year-old history that we had in terms of the sugar industry, and even post-World War II, when there was the beginning of a private sector in St. Kitts and Nevis, most of those businesses were serving the needs of the sugar industry. So either way, you were still strapped into this agrarian mindset where there was a dependency on the crown for your employment, for your development, for the things that you would require as a people. And that is the kind of shift that we need to see that we move away from, so that people become more self-reliant and people understand that yes, government is there to meet your needs through the social programs that we provide, to the opportunities for investment, opportunities for entrepreneurship, because that is another paradigm shift that we want to see as a team unity government, where we teach our young people to not just go through the school system by robotics and then figure, well, okay, I am going through school from kindergarten right up to CFB, I get my CAPE subjects, and then I go off to college, and then somebody has to provide me with a job. It's about what can you do, what kind of innovation can you bring to bear, what kind of untapped sectors do we have in St. Kitts and Nevis that you, through your own initiative and ingenuity and innovation, can say, well, look, this is a niche area in St. Kitts and Nevis that's not been met, and maybe rather than expecting to find a job, perhaps I can create my own opportunity, and by extension I create other jobs. Of course, when we get into the whole topic of entrepreneurship, it prevents some very controversial arguments, because for some young people it might mean going on to college, probably doing an MBA if you get that far, or deciding to forego college because your business idea came so early that you don't see the need to go to a traditional bricks and mortar college to get a 4-year degree. And then there are so many best cases examples that we have internationally that might support that, like the Bill Gates story, and so many other people, or Sam Walton, as is the case of the Walmart brand. These are people who neither, well, in one case of Bill Gates, he dropped out. In the case of Sam Walton, I don't think it was an opportunity he had, because he worked in a particular business and then he decided, why can't I do this for myself? And now Walmart is the biggest retail chain globally. Just like how everybody knows the Bill Gates name, or you happen to own an Apple product or know somebody who owns an Apple product. So that is the kind of example that I think that we should be having more of, and some of it is happening. Some of it has been facilitated by government, perhaps, for example, through the passage of the small business legislation in November 2009 for small business development, and there are certain provisions and fiscal incentives that are designed to assist startup business persons in terms of getting their act together in terms of plant and equipment, machinery, that type of stuff, as well as the business support services provided by agencies like NED, the National Entrepreneurial Development Division that is housed within the Ministry of Trade, to provide that type of hand-holding experience to the budding entrepreneur. Things like perhaps bookkeeping, hiring of staff, succession planning. What happens if your business grows enough to the point where you want to take it public? By that I mean being publicly traded on the ECSC or some other stock exchange to raise capital. These are some of the things that we as a country need to build on. And of course, we have strategic partners when it comes to foreign affairs and diplomacy that we can lean on, who have best case examples in that too, best practices that we can use. One such country is Taiwan, who happens to be the very first country that this country developed diplomatic relations with immediately after independence. Because with Taiwan, because of the investments they have made in entrepreneurship, you have found that there's so many global brands now coming out of Taiwan from that incubator type small business approach that you can't believe started in somebody's kitchen or somebody's garage. Some examples that we might not even think of coming out of Taiwan that started as micro businesses includes BenQ, which is one of the electronic producers that makes things like LCD projectors. They also make other small audiovisual type equipment. Then there's Acer Computers. For a moment, you will never think that these are companies that started at the very micro level, where somebody let them share space in a business incubator. The space might be just 5 feet by 8 feet, but that's where they started. And they had the support infrastructure, including the financing, such as venture capital funding backed by the government and other private sector stakeholders that now make them the household names that they are. So that is another part of the shift that we would like to see in terms of entrepreneurship and getting away from a dependency mindset where we are teaching, as they say, our people how to fish. Okay, not just taking fish and carrying it to them. So that is another paradigm shift that we need to see, and these are the kind of things that I found has characterized the first 9 months for me in terms of where I would like us to go and where we need to change mindsets in terms of getting people to see their true potential.
Fantastic, and it's clear from what you have just said that the government, the Team Unity government, is one that has vision.